Aquiles, let's talk about money. This is the topic that everybody wants to hear from nowadays. We're listening so many stuff, so many uh, inputs about the Federal Reserve, about the economy, about the golden age of America. What's going on, Achilles?
A lot of garbage going on. That's what's happening right now. You know, there's a lot of disinformation. There's a lot of things going on. But, the big thing is that you hear that Trump wants the Fed to lower interest rates so we can basically refinance our debt at a lower rate of interest. And he's not happy that he thinks Powell's taking too long in order to do this. But the Fed doesn't care. The Fed is independent for a reason, and thankfully so, because the adults at the table look at all the data that's coming in. They look at unemployment. They look at many different indicators, leading, lagging, and the like, that come in and say to us, "Hey, the economy's here. We need to be here, and we can't just we can't be lackadaisical about how we're going to treat interest rates." Now, that being said, what's happening right now is that we're going to see rate cuts
Mm.
coming in the next quarter. Probably in September is going to be the first one. There are going to be multiple cuts going on because the Fed is seeing that inflation is still not under control. And that part of that is you're starting to see all those costs starting to augment, starting to move up. And at the same time, you have to say to yourself, oh, you know what? I'm having a tough time. I'm having a tough time meeting my costs. And just as important is that, I get a salary from the company, but it's not enough. Do I need to start a side hustle? Why aren't the companies paying a little bit more to keep a living wage? Back in the 50s and the 60s, you could have, one person worked in the family, they could cover the mortgage, they could cover the expenses, and still have a little disposable income to enjoy life. The American dream was that you could do all that. So the dream is being right now, we're seeing the dream not going away, but it's a little bit more challenging right now. And we want to make sure that people are living the dream, but this at the same time, not forgetting that they have responsibilities, not putting themselves into too much debt to live the life that they wanted.
And I want to touch that point because we can come back to the Fed real quick, but debt. Right now, this country has the record debt, 37 trillion. We just surpassed that threshold. But also, the credit card debt is in historic highs. So we are not only as a country, but as individuals, as households, we are getting into debt more and more. And now we have a record debt in credit cards. That means we don't have enough money in our hands to to for our lifestyle or just to make a living. What does that tell you? Is that impacting the markets that we see that is very volatile? It's sometimes it's green, sometimes it's red. Is this one of the things that is not allowing us to have I would say a healthy green market, mostly weekly on a weekly basis? I don't know. You tell me. You're the expert.
Well, the thing you have to remember, the credit card debt is a very good point to bring up, because if you're paying 30 to 40% on credit card debt, you're drowning in debt right now, especially if you can't make ordinary payments. You're just putting the bare minimum, not doing anything more. Then you have to do, what you have to do to survive. But we weren't put on this earth to survive. We were put on this earth to make an impact in our own special ways. And some of the most successful people I've ever run into know this, but it is difficult if you can't make a living wage. And you have, these companies, instead of solely enhancing shareholder value, need to start recognizing that they have to put up the wages. Back in the early 1900s, the unions were catalysts to start, making more wages. We need to see something similar with not just workers, but uh, an attitude overall. Now, the market doesn't care if interest rates are higher or lower. I mean, for the short term, sure, but when we talk about the markets, we're talking about corporate earnings. We're talking about uh, other factors at play here. And of course, inflation comes into play if the goods and services are costing companies more. But we also have to look at consumer confidence. If people are not buying as much as they did in the past, then the economy starts to shrink. And we start to see that shrink being a symptom-wide condition. And that's the last thing we want. We want the economy, we want people to keep spending, not foolishly, but on things they would normally spend. And in absence of that, and only spending with the credit cards and the like, we're heading into what I call it's like a false sense of growth if they're only doing that. So we want to be careful. We want to make sure that, if you're not getting ahead, you're not putting yourself into more problems as a consumer, and be aware that inflation is going to drive down. We could see some growth once the Fed starts to lower interest rates. I don't see it happening till September at the earliest, but then we might see subsequent drops in interest rates from that point on, and that could be a positive.
But you mentioned about the spending and that we are spending in one side, but we are not spending as much as probably the market would want us to. But also the companies are not importing as much as a few months ago because of the tariffs. So we have a lot of stuff that if we put them together, the consumer doesn't trust the market right now, doesn't trust it out there to go and spend their money because they don't know if they're going to get it back in salary or if things are going to continue to be stable. They don't know if they can get fired because now we see unemployment as high as almost the pandemic 3 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago. So how would you assess this situation, not only the markets, but also I would say the wide range economy? How would you assess it right now?
No, the right wide range economy, we're pretty much in a consolidation, moving sideways. We're not seeing a whole bunch of growth at this particular point. You mentioned unemployment. Unemployment is still controlled versus what we saw. Compared to the pandemic, you have to remember that's a one-time event. So right now, what you have to remember is that unemployment and inflation, which are under really the Fed's two top indicators that they look at, in terms of whether they're going to do something about whether injecting money into the economy, lowering interest rates, and the like. So these two factors are important, but more importantly is the consumer. Well, I mean, not just as important is consumer confidence. Am I going to spend? Am I going to hold back? And these are the things that we're seeing right now. People are not putting as much money away into their retirement plans. People, and therefore the market, may not move up as much, or people are not buying that new home because the interest rate's at 6.5%, and maybe it might be more palatable at 5%. Who knows, right?
Hmm.
But once again, going back to the economy as a whole and the markets as a whole, the economy is okay right now. It is not in jeopardy, I would say, at this point, but it's not doing great as well. And we could, at any given moment, start talking about the R word, which is a recession, which simply means that you have 2 quarters of negative GDP or negative growth. And these are the things we got to be aware of. I don't see the factors just yet as to whether that may or may not happen, but it is important to stay aware of these numbers. It is important to watch your expenses, and it is also important to put money away in investments if you possibly can. If not, obviously, you are doing yourself, taking care of your family right now and doing that. But if at all possible, it is possible to do so, you have to move forward. You have to go in there and let your money make money for you. So that way you're not just running to stand still with inflation.
And you're the expert in that matter. If you need your money to be wiser with your money, Aquiles is not only an author of two books, Your Money and You, but also and Wise Up with Your Money, but also a financial advisor, expert in this matter. How do we do something about it? How do we, if we don't have enough money, like I saw in this viral TikTok video, this poor lady, she was, I was so touched. She was just expressing herself, saying, I cannot have, I don't have enough money to just to get by. I have to decide if, either if I put gas on my car or go and buy some groceries. Obviously, I don't have any gas for next week because I went and I bought some, purchased some groceries. How can uh, the mass majority of Americans that are living like me or everybody almost paycheck to paycheck, we are getting to next week or 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks, depending on everybody's situation. How can you also invest when you are in the middle of a situation that the economy may be okay, but maybe our pockets aren't?
Yeah, it's a bit of a challenge. And the answer is there's no easy answer. About that example that you brought out about the lady, there are resources, local resources that could help her, uh, with what's going on. And then, she might be able to put some money away, if that's the particular case. But if not, what's going to happen is that she has no choice. She has to run up her credit cards and pay the bare minimum and not get ahead. So there is a price for inflation that's coming due, and we're starting to see it right now. So we need to be on top of it, but at the same time, we need to be on top of our personal lives. My mother many years ago would say to me when I was a kid, she'd go, Achilles, the time is like a wave. Next thing you know, the wave goes by and 10 years have gone past.
Hmm.
So don't let it go past you. The importance of putting some money aside, not just for a rainy day, but to stay ahead of inflation, to give yourself choices. So little, I don't care if you put away 20 bucks at a time, but the point being is you're doing something. And that way, when the rainy day starts, or, when something happens, so money gives you the choice. It's not a freedom, it's a choice as to how you deal or handle adversity. And I think that's important.
But you have also mentioned in previous conversations that um, just putting money away doesn't it helps, but it doesn't help you make get there, because right now that money has a value, and the value in time of money is very important as well. So you may have 20 bucks now, but tomorrow that's 18 bucks because of the inflation. You also suggest, you recommend other stuff with those 20 bucks, right?
No, of course. I mean, there are people who take ordinary things that they do and they monetize them. There are people who can take that $20, invest them, and make $25, So,
Maybe
once
they don't see
again,
that much. Sorry, Achilles, but if you make 25, you're putting 25% of gain. You have a profit of 25% on those 20 bucks. That if you had $100,000, then it's 125 now. But it's when you see it in that perspective, from that perspective, then you are gaining something out of the money instead of just putting it aside.
yeah, absolutely. And the cool thing is that if you invest in the market at all different times, sometimes it's up, sometimes it's down. If it's lower, you get more shares, you get more for your money, and then when it goes up, all of a sudden you thought it was 25%, and then all of a sudden it's not 25%, it's 50% because you had invested all along at all different points, positive and negative markets. So this is why the market does work for people, but you have to have discipline. And I've talked about that in my book. Discipline is key when it comes to investing. And it's really more a sense of, can I hold on while everybody is losing their heads? I have people call me once in a while and they say, what are we going to do about this market? And I go, in what sense? You don't control the market. We can only worry about what we can control, and we can control our attitude, and we can control the amount of money that we put into it. And that, in terms of long term, is your key to success.
If you also want more keys to success, larreawealth.com. That's the man right there, Aquiles Larrea, CEO and founder of larreawealth.com. And it doesn't matter if you're not a millionaire, he can make you there. I hope you can help us to get there. I'm kidding. I'm joking, but we trust you, and that's the most important thing. Because we, in those segments, I think we are going to touch other topics like how to invest, what are the best at the moment, shares, stocks, companies to maybe dive in and start putting that effort to put some money there and to trust the process. So I think that's going to be very, very valuable, Aquiles. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you, Rafael.
Well, we'll continue with this. We have to put a name on this money segments because people need to continue to wise up with their money, but also hear more about how can they do it.
No, just say su dinero.
Un abrazo. Thank you so much, Aquiles.
Thanks, Rafael. Cuídate.
Ahí terminé. ¿Qué pasó? Perdón, ¿qué te pareció? ¿Te gustó?